We have 6, Jim.
Yes, I got 7:30. So Amy, are you ready to go?
I am.
All right, can you please call the roll? I call the meeting to order at 7:30.
Mr. Fuller,
Here.
Mr. DeLumo, Mr. Malta,
Here.
Mr. Manel,
Here.
Mr. Van Wagner, Mr. Ashkenazi,
Here.
Mrs. Beal,
Here.
Mr. Mamie, Mr. Worrell.
Here. Okay, can we please have the pledges of allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, the notice of this required open public meeting law of this meeting has been satisfied. A copy of the notice has been sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Coaster and filed in the office of the Township of Ocean on July 16th, 2021. It's the board policy that no new cases will be started after 10 p.m. and no testimony taken after 10:30 p.m. In addition, the applicants will be limited to 45 minutes of testimony. Notice of this meeting will be videotaped and audio taped and shown on the Township of Ocean Community Cable Channel, channels 22 and Verizon Bios, and channel 77. Okay, with that being said, we have some housekeeping to do. We have memorializations, resolutions of memorializations. Can I read them? Can we bulk them together, or do they have to be read individually?
Is everybody, I believe everybody was here was everybody here last month when we did these? Everybody's here tonight, board members.
I'm here.
Yes, everybody was here last month when we did these.
Not me.
No, not Malta or Manel.
Okay, Malta and Manel were not here last month. So you, other than that, everybody else was, so that one person can offer them second and only those people would vote. So the answer is yes.
Happy to offer them.
I'll second. Orel. Thank you. So
You want to read them by name?
yes. You want block and lot number, also an address, or just name?
We usually do the whole thing, just in case anybody
Okay.
is interested. They'll know what it is. Okay.
Mr. Ralph Rova, block 25, lot 143, 423 Brookside Avenue, Oakhurst, bulk variance approval. Tina and Sean Mahoney, block 98, lot 2, 1403 Walnut Avenue, Ocean, bulk variance approval. Eric Ercolino, block 36, lot 30.01, 1231 Deal Road, Ocean, New Jersey, bulk variance. Paul Flamma, block 33, lot 51.01, 1606 Holbrook Street, Oakhurst, bulk variance approval. Elliot Daba, block 66, lot 9, 620 Myrtle Avenue, West Allenhurst, bulk variance approval. Felix Garcia and Rita Del Castillo, block 35.06, lot 1, 9 Hartshorn Road, Ocean, New Jersey, bulk variance approval. Nicholas Milano, block 113, lot 44, 37 Wanamassa Point Road, Ocean, bulk variance approval. Joseph Williams Jr., block 194, lot 2.22, 2 James Drive, Ocean, bulk variance approval. David Miserai, block 12.05, lot 14, 296 Lawrence Avenue, bulk variance. And Isaac Rawls, block 25.26, lot 8, 203 Cliffwood Road, Ocean, bulk variance approval. All right. With that being said, we are up to our first case number 1.
No, wait, we gotta, somebody moved it and somebody seconded it now.
Oh.
Amy needs to do the little roll call. There's not too many people. Go ahead.
Amy, can you call the roll, please? I'm sorry.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Okay, so that's for all the resolutions, right?
Yes, because all those people were present last
And then
time.
we just have to do the minutes before we move on.
Okay, somebody needs to make a motion to approve minutes of March 18th, 2021.
I'll offer to approve the minutes.
Second.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Jim Morrell. I gotta say Jim Morrell as opposed to Jim Higgins. You're fading out a little bit. Is everybody else experiencing that? That Jim is fading out a little bit?
Yeah, he seemed a little low.
Yeah, so I'll do the carriage if it's okay with you, Jim. Okay?
Go
The
ahead.
following, yeah, because I don't want to miss that. The following cases are carried to September 9th, 2021 on the Zoom invitation that is on the website and would be in next month's agenda, which when it was posted. Following Morris Dweck, Block 43, Lots 1 and 2, 300 Parker Avenue, Deal Park. Kenneth Greenstein, Block 22, Lot 90, 204 West Morgan Avenue, Ocean. Vidyadan Ashkoff Kale, Block 37.19, Lot 10, 19 Bentley Drive, Ocean. D. Dip Auto Group, Block 137, Lots 1, 2, and 3, 807 Highway 35, Ocean. Jesse Schomer, Block 12.06, Lot 4, 9 Bergen Avenue, Ocean. 3,500 Sunset LLC, Block 43, Lots 1 and 2, 3,500 Sunset Avenue, Ocean. Christopher Tillis, Block 121, Lot 5, 1406 Camp Avenue, Ocean. And Sorora Land Development, Block 22, Lots 85 and 85.01, 280 Norwood Avenue, Ocean. And I believe Seaview Corporate Park, Block 149.01, Lot 1.01, 2603 Route 66, Ocean. All of those cases will be carried without further notice to the next meeting on September 9th. No. Is that what you said?
Yes.
It's earlier. It's 1 week earlier than usual. Also. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's September 9th, which is for the public. It's 1 week earlier than the 3rd. It's the second Thursday, I'm sure. I assume because of the holidays.
Correct.
Okay. So now we're ready, Mr. Chairman, for case number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Steinberg. Case number 1 tonight, Sophia Chapin, Block 25.32, Lot 10, 402 Roosevelt Avenue, Ocean, Zone R4. This applicant is to construct an in-the-ground pool with pool patio and fence. The property is pre-existing, non-conforming, and it does not meet the required lot size or width. The dwelling is pre-existing, non-conforming, and that it does not meet the required for in and side yard setbacks. Variances are needed for the side yard and rear setbacks. Okay, are they present?
Yes. Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Hi,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you very much. Welcome. Who's going to testify tonight?
Sophia.
Hi, me.
Okay. All right. I need to swear you in, so if you could please raise your right hand. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from our professionals first before I hear from the applicant. So, Mr. Matlock, do you have anything to engineering?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a a little bit of a concern with regard to grading. I'd like the applicant to talk about their grading plan. They are proposing a recharge trench in the back of the yard. It's actually it's the side yard, and it's very close to the property line. I'd like to see some sizing calculations for that. I think that can be done as a condition of approval. But I think just a little bit more detail on the plan is needed to make sure that there's no runoff directed towards adjacent properties. That's my only concern.
Thank you.
I spoke to my engineer, and we're going to have an engineer provide a recharge trench. And we're going to also provide additional grading for the recharge. And we're also going to provide calculations for the 100-year storm. So we're going to do all of that you ask. Not a problem.
All right.
Spoke to the engineer.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to hear from our next professional, Mr. Higgins.
Surely. My report's dated August 15th, and first, I want to apologize to the applicants. I just noticed that Spell Check changed their name. It changed it to Chapman. It's Japan.
No problem.
It's okay. I'll read the report. It's very short. The applicant proposes to construct a pool patio, and fence in a front yard. The following variances are required. Setback of accessory structures. The ordinance requires that accessory structures other than buildings such as swimming pools, patios, etc., maintain the required 30-foot front yard setback and 10-foot side and rear yard setbacks. The plan proposes front yard setbacks to Oakhurst Road of 26 feet to the water's edge, 22.4 feet to the pool steps, 19.4 feet to the walkway, and 14 feet to the pool equipment. Side and rear yard setbacks conform. The lot is a corner lot that is significantly undersized with regard to lot width and lot area. The zone requires a lot width of 90 feet and 52.42 feet exists, and a lot area of 10,000 square feet and 6,552 square feet exists. Consequently, there's a significant hardship since the corner lot requires 30-foot front yard setbacks on both frontages. All of the proposed improvements are located behind the existing setback of the residence. No changes are proposed to the residence. The front setbacks are also consistent with the front setbacks of other residences along Oakhurst Road. It should also be noted that the setbacks from Roosevelt Avenue, which is the more heavily traveled street, conform. It should be noted that the zoning table is incorrect as to the building and impervious coverage. It calculates those coverages based on total lot area. The correct figures based on the buildable lot area of 4,914 square feet or 20.9% for building coverage and 45.4% for impervious coverage. And it should be noted that those both still conform. So I really don't have a big problem with this application.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Okay, now back to the applicant. Would you like to tell us what you would like to see or why you're here?
We're looking to put a pool for our family, for our children, also for exercise purposes, and I have bad knees, so it's therapeutic to swim and helpful. And we're just looking to improve our house and enjoy the summers.
Okay. Do the board members have any questions? No questions from the board members. All right. Do we have any questions from the public? There's no questions from the public. I need someone to move to close the public.
I'll move that we close
Yes.
public hearing.
Thank you.
Second it, Malta.
Mr. Malta seconded. Thank you. With that being said, I guess we're looking for a positive resolution here. Would someone offer?
I think you have to call the roll.
I'm sorry.
Let's call the roll to close the public hearing.
Mr.
Call the
Fuller,
roll, please.
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Thank you. I need someone to offer
If you're going to offer a positive resolution, I would assume it's going to be subject to the requirements of our board engineer, which is set forth in his letter. And Jim, did you want the plans revised to show the appropriate lot coverage, et cetera, that you wanted corrected?
Yeah, I think that should be done just so there's no confusion in the
In the
future.
future. Okay. So that would be, both of those would be conditions of approval. He's going to have to show some change plans anyhow for the drainage, and that can be placed on that, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. So if somebody could move that, I've got it.
I'll move Russell Malta.
I need a
I'll
second.
second.
Thank you. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Okay, good luck to you both.
Thank-
Thank you.
You can call Amy tomorrow for the details.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay,
Have a
thank
good
you.
night. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, our next case up is Michael Volik.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm
Will you
good.
be
Thank you.
Good. Will you be testifying tonight?
Yes.
All right, could you raise your right hand and please, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I hear from our professionals first, Mr. Higgins?
Our report stated is very short one. The applicant proposes to maintain an existing non-conforming fence.
Jim locked up.
Jim, you're in and out.
What? I'm in and out?
You are.
Okay. Hold on 1 minute. Let's see if this, is that any better?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Okay, I'll start again. The applicant proposes to maintain an existing non-conforming fence. Variances that are necessary are the accessory structure, front and rear yard setback. The ordinance requires that all accessory structures, including pools, patios, pads, etc., maintain required 50-foot front yard setback and 10-foot rear yard setback. A very small portion of the pool patio is set back 46.7 feet from Powell Drive, and another very small portion of the pool patio is set back 8 feet from the rear property line. In both instances, the infractions are minimal and are screened by an existing fence. There's also a variance necessary for maximum fence height within the required front yard and maximum height of a solid fence within a required front yard. The ordinance limits the height of a fence in the front yard to 4 feet and the height of a solid fence to 3 feet. The existing fence is 6 foot high and is located within the Powell Drive front yard at 41.4 feet. It's set back at its closest point to Powell Drive. The setback of the fence is considerable and is not inconsistent with the character of the area. Some plantings exist along the fence line, but the board may want to consider requiring some additional plantings to further soften the visual impact. That's
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Matlock, any report from you, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are not really any substantial changes to this plan. There's minimal area of the patio that violates the setback. I really don't have any engineering issues with it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do the board members have any questions of this applicant? Okay. Can the applicant please give us a brief summary of what you're doing here tonight, what you'd like to see?
Sure. I'd like to just keep the existing fence where it is. It's only a few feet over from the Powell Drive setback. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Any questions from the board members once more? Okay, if not, is there any questions from the public?
The only thing that, well, yeah, before you go to that, Jim, I don't know if any of the board members are seeking any additional landscaping to buffer the fence, as Jim suggests, or they're satisfied because of its setback, that it's satisfactory. Anybody have any comments on that? Board members?
I would like to see some plantings, that are acceptable to our professional planner as a, condition of any approval.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Jim, do you have any suggestions or?
Well, there's a number of plants there. I would
Jim's
think
locked down.
maybe 6 or 7 more small plants that might grow to 4 feet in height to be interspersed amongst the existing plants that are there. The fence
To
isn't
grow to 4 feet?
appears to be off-white, so it's not, doesn't have a great deal of visual impact.
So you're looking for 6 or 7 additional small plantings at what height?
Planted at a height of 3 feet, and they should grow at least to 4 feet.
Okay.
Okay, and where do you want them, or any?
Well, they would be interspersed amongst the existing plantings that are there now.
All right. So did you want a sort of a plan of some sort to look at, or you just satisfactory? with 6 or 7?
Normally, we have a plan to look at, and it doesn't have to be formally drawn up. It can be a sketch.
Okay, we'll call it sketch.
Types
All
of,
right, and I understand. And when would you want this planted?
I would say
By
by October.
Okay, perfect.
October 1,
Um,
1, 10,
I'd say
15?
October 31st. Especially the way the
Got it.
summers have been going. They've been getting later and later.
Got it. Okay. Yes. Okay. That's a condition of approval if the board should approve. And I'm sorry, Mr. Royal, for interrupting you. I think you were asking the public.
Thank you, Mr. Steinberg. Any questions from the public like to be heard on this application?
Yes. Christensen,
Well,
Christensen
please
2
state-
Drive.
Please state your name and address.
Per Christensen 2 Pal Drive.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
So the variance plan says there's 40 linear feet of vinyl siding on actually our property. That will be moved to Michael's property. I just want to make sure that it's noted that we expect every concrete material to remove this underground. The underground concrete that supports the fence, that is removed in the process of moving the fence.
But the fence isn't going to be moved. There's
It has to
nothing
be.
proposed to be changed from what exists there.
It's on our
And there's
property.
nothing on the plan that indicates anything's on your property. That's
It
what I'm
is.
trying to.
If you look at the variance plan, the note at the very bottom,
We are lot 134.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on the variance plan, there's a note at the bottom that says approximately 40 linear feet of fencing installed outside the rear line shall be reinstalled onto subject
Oh,
property.
yeah, that's, I do see that now. Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking that up on the notes.
so
So
my
that should be a requirement of the approval if that fence is outside. Yeah, it is. Looking at the plan now, you can see where it is on their property.
So, Mr. Higgins, what do you suggest that's happening? Is it actually on the property?
But yeah, it should be installed on the Volik's property. Should be removed from the adjacent property and installed on the Volik's property. And that would have to be worked out between the two of them. It could be a condition of the approval, but it would have to be worked out because the board can't, I don't think, Mark, you can correct me, but I don't think the board can require the applicant to do anything on an adjacent property.
Mr. Steinberg?
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean, as a condition of the approval, it's going to have to move the fence. So if he moves the fence, he needs a new foundation.
And
Mr.
you don't want
Volik, are you on board with that?
Well,
Yes.
I guess,
yeah, I think the neighbors though have a concern about when the, you know,
Yeah,
the conditions
I
of the
think,
move.
look, we are giving a variance to keep a fence that is over the height and the setback situation. So I don't think I think we can, subject to the approval to the 40 feet of linear fence being moved onto the applicant's property, and that he remove any foundation or remnants from the adjacent property. Now, that goes along with the adjacent property owners permitting them, his people, to come on your property and move it.
It also looks to me as if there's a chain link fence, which I assume belongs to the owners of the adjacent property.
Yes, that's correct. That's ours.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, that shows definitely on theirs, but you know, it's in a variance, and I think we can require him to move not only the fence but its foundation, because they're over the property line.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to work that out with Mr. and Mrs. Christensen, because you need to go on their property to do so. Okay, anybody?
So when you say the foundation, you're actually saying the footings of the fence?
Yeah, the
Concrete
footings. The footings
If they're
are.
not on your property, you gotta move it.
Okay. Okay, but they understand that I will have to have my workers go on their property.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, we do.
okay, that's great. Okay.
We just need to organize when it's going to happen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Could there be a note? So it could be like October 1st, by October 1st?
No, it had 31st for the other stuff, so maybe.
Yeah, for the plans.
Okay, it would be the 31st for everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes it simple.
That would be the date.
Okay.
But we, okay.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Christensen, Mrs. Christensen?
Yes, we have another request. Mr. Volik has some speakers mounted under his deck that faces directly towards our property, and we would like to request that he consider them to be relocated, because the noise in our property is sometimes excessive.
Very loud, yeah. And for excessive time.
Mr. Steinberg, is that request
Well,
part of this?
we don't have control over that. There are ordinances in town as to noise. But I think as a good neighbor, Mr. Volik, can you redirect them so they're not directed to the property?
I can
can't
try
make a
and
condition, but you
I
see
can
what
try
you
and
do.
point them downward a little bit, but they are where they are. I can't really move them anywhere else because they're mounted to my top deck. I can try as best as I can to try and redirect them.
But
How about lowering the volume a little?
No, not redirect, but you could move them, for instance, on your
We
north
can't,
side.
Mr. Christensen, we don't have the ability to order that. If you feel that the noise is excessive, there are ordinances in town and you can make a complaint.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't have jurisdiction to do that, but Mr. Volik, can you see what you can do to satisfy this problem so it doesn't become
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you both. Anyone else from the public like to be heard? If not, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Does any board member, roll call, please. Amy?
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Thank you. Do the board members have any further questions for this applicant? Okay, thank you. I guess we're looking for, Mr. Steinberg, can you sum up what we're looking for as a part of the resolution?
We're looking I assume a positive resolution to maintain the fence at its current location. And as conditions of that, number one, the applicant to provide 6 to 7 small plantings at 3 feet on center to be interspersed with the existing landscaping to grow to a height of at least 4 feet, with a sketch of the placement of the plants and the types of varieties, subject to the approval of the board or the township planner, and that the 40 feet of fence located on the adjacent property be moved in, or the 40 square feet, isn't it? Sorry. Linear feet, whatever it is, of fencing be moved to the property owned by the applicant, and that he further remove any foundation or anything that associated with the fence which is over the property line. All to be done by this, and all the plantings as well as the movement of the fence and its supports no later than October 31st, 2021.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need a board member to please offer a positive resolution that Mr. Steinberg just said.
Move for a positive resolution.
Office second.
Thank you. Amy, roll call, please.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Thank you all, and good luck to the applicant. Please call Amy tomorrow for your follow-up.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the case is Emily Sabraha, Block 22, Lot 102, 400 Grant Avenue, Zone R2. This applicant is to renovate an existing second floor sitting room and an outdoor balcony with required front yard setback. The attorney for the applicant today is also accompanying James E. Buber. Is the applicant here?
Thank you,
Berube,
Mr.
I'm
Royal.
sorry.
That's James Berube. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Is your applicant with you, or are you representing your applicant tonight?
I am, but Emil Sabah is with us as well. I believe he's unmuted and sitting in the center of your screen with Morris Sabah, his son. And I also have Anthony Ercolino, who is present as well. He may be on the second screen. He is the architect who had submitted the plans for this application. If I could have all three
Neither of them have turned their video on.
I'm here.
Present, yeah. There's no video. That's better. Now, Anthony, we need your video.
My video is on.
Now it is. Okay.
He was in hair and makeup, Mr. Steinberg. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Thank
who
you.
will
If
be
you could-
testifying tonight?
If you could swear in Mr. Ercolino and Mr. Sabah as well.
Okay. Gentlemen, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you could tell us a little bit about why you're here tonight, then I'll hear from our professionals.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is what I'd like to think of as a relatively simple application. This board had granted approvals for front yard setbacks back in 2020, I believe 2018. The home was reconstructed under those prior approvals. Our request today is merely to open up what is a sitting room in the master suite on the second floor of the structure, to open it up as an exterior open balcony. So nothing on the footprint changes, nothing on the square footage changes. And if the board members have seen the plans, as you face the house, it is the second floor extreme right side, approximately 6 by 12'9" portion that would be opened up and would be an exterior porch, which would be enclosed by railings as well. So nothing changes from the prior application, except that this is an exterior change, and the zoning officer had determined that a continued application on the previous variances was required, and that's why we're here.
Thank you, sir. Can we hear from Mr. Higgins? Jim?
He's
Higgins?
muted.
Still muted.
You're muted, Jim.
Why is this happening to me? My computer keeps muting me. I guess it doesn't like me. It's was explained very well by the attorney. The prior resolution of approval says that the plans have to be in strict conformance. The construction has to be in strict conformance with the plans. And since there's a minor change, it's no longer in strict conformance. So the board needs to look at it again. And quite frankly, I don't see any substantive difference between this and the prior approval.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Matlack, do you have something to add?
Yes, thank you. I also don't have any concerns with this application, seeing that there's no change to the footprint of the building. I don't see any engineering concerns. The one question I would have is just that the applicant verify that there is no change to the height of the building, that the existing height remains, or the second floor addition is consistent with the existing height.
Yes, it's unchanged. The roof is the existing roof and it's not going to change.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matlack. Thank you. Does the applicant have any more testimony before I call on the board members? If not, do the board members have any questions for this applicant? I do. Will the siding and the roofing all match to the existing building? Mr. Carlino?
Yes, we have stucco going in on the interior portion of the balcony, the new exterior wall where the sliding glass doors are. Yes, it's going to match the existing siding. The roof is exactly the same. It's unchanged, the roof. There'd be a railing out at the edge of the balcony.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members have any questions? If not, then we'll go to anyone from the public have a question for this applicant. No questions from the public. I need someone to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
A second?
I second.
Thank you. Amy, roll call, please.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Oh, warm it up.
Okay. Mr. Steinberg, can you sum up what we're looking for in our resolution?
Yes, we're looking for the setback variances, because what has happened is when we grant a variance which has setbacks and deviations from the zoning ordinance, they have to build what they plan to build, which, by the way, was in 2006. Now that they're changing it somewhat, they sort of need to reaffirm the same setback variances, which they've done so. So that's all we would be doing, is permitting the portion of the house to be opened as a deck with the same existing setbacks.
Thank you, Mr. Steinberg. I need a positive motion from the board.
Offer.
Positive resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. I need a second.
I'll second Ms. Beal.
Thank you very much. Amy, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Good luck to the applicant. Please call Amy, our board secretary, tomorrow to follow up on your details.
Thank you.
Yes. Members of the board. Have a
Thank
good night.
you. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
All right, our next case, Jason and Michelle Oma, block 35.05, lot 5, 24 Canterbury Drive, Ocean, R2 zone. This applicant is to construct an outdoor fireplace, 12 by 12 pavilion, outdoor kitchen, as well as remove the existing pool patio and pavers, which are within the required front yard setback. Is our applicants here tonight?
Yes, we are.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Who will be testifying?
I will. Michelle Oma.
Okay, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can you please tell us a little bit why you're here tonight?
We're looking to build an outdoor kitchen and fireplace on our pre-existing patio. Apparently, it was built outside the setback. We're considered to have 2 front yards because we live on a corner. So we only have 36 feet instead of 50. So we're trying to change the existing patio and build the kitchen and fireplace.
Okay, thank you. Can I hear from Mr. Higgins, please?
Sure. Okay, it's, the variances are necessary or the setback of the accessory buildings. The ordinance allows more than 1 accessory building per lot. 1 accessory building may be permitted for which the side and rear yard setback requirements shall be no less than 5 feet, provided it does not exceed 10 feet in height or 150 square feet in area and is not attached to or within 10 feet of the principal building. All additional accessory buildings shall conform to the minimum setback requirements of the principal building. There are 2 accessory buildings on the site. There's the pavilion and there's a shed that's also shown on the site. Then you have the setback of accessory structures. Similar to accessory buildings, accessory structures, including pools, patios, decks, etc., must maintain required 50-foot front yard setback and 10-foot rear yard setback. The existing pool surround is non-conforming in that it does not meet the required 50-foot front yard setback and the 10-foot rear yard setback. The ordinance states that no building or structure shall hereinafter be erected, structurally altered, enlarged, or rebuilt except in conformity. Therefore, the removal and replacement of the pool patio and the construction of the fireplace, outdoor kitchen, and the maintenance of the pavilion require the variance. With regard to the shed, there is a small shed. The deviation is minimal. It's at 4.39 feet and does not seem that moving it less than a foot would be a significant gain. The site does have 2 accessory buildings so that at least one of them has to meet the requirements of the principal structure, which I would say would be the pavilion. The pavilion, the patio, and the proposed kitchen are set back 36 feet from Duffield Drive and 50 feet is required, and they're set back 8 feet from the rear property line where 40 feet is required. All of these structures are very heavily screened. You can't see them from the street. I went by the site. I don't see a real problem with them. They basically exist at this point in time, and I don't see where there's any negative impact. As far as constructing the kitchen and the fireplace, again, they won't be seen from the street at all because there's very heavy landscaping that screens the pool area and that patio area. So I really don't have a big problem with it.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Let's hear from our township engineer,
Yeah, but-
Mr. Matlock.
Okay, excuse me, Jim, what about the height of the pavilion? You would question that.
The height of the pavilion, okay. Yeah, and the ordinance, and I'm trying to think what the ordinance says here. Okay, it's the height of the pavilion is 15 feet. The applicant did submit a supplementary report on that. And they also asked, there was a question as to whether or not the second shed, the smaller shed, would be maintained, and they said they wanted to maintain that. So the height of the pavilion is 15 feet instead of 10 feet. And again, you can't see it from the street. The vegetation extends like 25 feet.
And that requires another variance though, right?
That does require a variance, yes.
And they're asking for it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Matlock, our township engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I see here is that when you put a roofed structure in place of the patio, you have downspouts typically associated with that. So you're concentrating rainwater. So I just want to confirm that downspouts will be directed away from the neighboring property. Otherwise, I really don't see an issue. And I think just for clarification purposes, if the applicant could confirm this is not any type of dwelling unit, it's open kitchen. It's not meant for anybody to live there or rent out or anything like that.
Good idea.
Yes, correct. It's just an open area to be used for the grill and stuff.
Okay.
And I talked to the builder and he said the downspouts will be directed the way you suggested.
Okay. That's fine with me. I don't have any other concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Matlack. Does the board members have any questions for this applicant? Board's awful quiet tonight. They're usually loaded with questions. Okay. With that being said, is there anyone from the public have any comments for this applicant? Any testimony? If not, I need a motion to close the public session.
I'll move to close the public hearing. Malta.
I'll second.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Okay, I need Mr. Steinberg to sum up.
But there's setback for the kitchen, setback for the patio that's existing, setback for the shed that's existing, and the height of the outdoor kitchen all require variances. They're all existing.
I'll move for a positive resolution, Malta.
No conditions. Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. All right, thank you. Good luck to the applicant, and please call Amy, our board secretary, tomorrow to follow up on any paperwork or what have you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Okay. Our next case is Mr. Seth McAfee. Is he present?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McAfee, we're at block 122, lot 6, 21 Amasa Point Road, Ocean R6 zone. This applicant is to construct a second floor dormer addition to reconstruct an existing detached garage, which is a pre-existing non-conforming. For the dormer addition, variances are necessary for minimum and front yard setback, and for the garage, reconstruction variances are needed for front and side yard setback. All right, Mr. McAfee, can you tell me what you're looking for here tonight?
Yes, hi. You just like me to describe what we're doing?
Oh, I'm sorry, I got to swear you in. I forgot to swear you in. Can you raise your right hand?
Mr. Chairman, I've also got my architect here on the call too, Dan Kopek.
Okay, if you can raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm looking to build a dormer on the second floor of my home. There's a room on the lower level that doesn't have anything built above it. That room is immediately adjacent the master bedroom. So I'm looking to add a master bath by building onto that room. We're not looking to expand the existing envelope of the home. We're just building up on a room that currently has no structure on top of it. The second part of the project is that the garage on the property is of questionable structural integrity. And it's a safety concern for my children. So I'd just like to rebuild the garage with the same dimensions such that it's structurally sound.
Okay. I'd like to hear from our experts. Mr. Higgins?
Yeah, again, I'll be very brief. With regard to the second-story dormer, again, as the applicant said, they're not extending any of the existing setback variances. The existing building requires a 30-foot front yard setback, and it's set back 29 feet from Wanamassa Place. That's not going to change. It's just going to go up vertically. The rear yard setback, 30 feet is required, and the existing is 24.4 feet. And again, it's just going to go up vertically. It's not going to be reduced as far as its horizontal distance. So I really don't have a problem with that. In fact, I think it balances out the building, makes it look a little bit more attractive. As far as the garage goes, again, I think it's more of a technical variance. The ordinance says you can't repair or rebuild a structure that's non-conforming. And what the applicant's trying to do is to basically rebuild one side of the garage, as I understand it, so that it's structurally sound, because currently now it's not structurally sound. So nothing is being changed, it's a matter of improving it.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Our township engineer, Mr. Matlack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I have no engineering issues with this. There's no changes to the site improvements or grading or anything like that. So just change the building, no concerns on my end.
Okay, thank you, sir. Does any board members have questions for this applicant at this time?
I've got one. The height of the garage will not change as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other board member?
Chair, just to follow up on that, it's kind of a question for the applicant, but then also for our professionals. So the garage is you're just going to fix, basically, and it's going to stay this. It's going to be the same footprint and the same height and everything.
That's correct, sir.
And you have to come for a variance. It's frustrating, right? I wonder if, I know from time to time we make suggestions to the council on changes to ordinances. Maybe we could consider.
Okay, John, this is not a repair. My understanding is that Mr. McAfee wants to build a new structure. Is that correct, Mr. McAfee?
Yes, sir. I want to build a new structure with the same dimensions, the same, same
My
footprint.
understanding was
John, if they were going to repair, structurally repair something in an existing non-conforming location, then they wouldn't have to be here.
Where I'm going with that is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we successfully got the council to change an ordinance so that if somebody was going to replace an existing non-conforming driveway in the exact same footprint, they wouldn't have to come to us. I wonder if there's something similar we could do for this area of town.
I think that if you talk to Jim, it would violate the land use laws. When it comes to a driveway, that's really not a structure in my, humble opinion. But there are a lot of people that are on property lines, and in some instances, the board would want to rule that they need to. The problem is it's an all or nothing kind of conversation. I don't disagree, but if Mr. McAfee were to repair what he has, he wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was my understanding from looking at the application that he just wanted to repair. So if he's going to replace in the variance, it's definitely more than a technical variance. But again, that area is unique. And it's when we look at the master plan and the zoning later this year, we're going to have to look at that and look at that area and come up with better standards.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, this is Daniel Kopek. I'm the architect on the project.
Yes, sir. I need to swear you in.
I need to be sworn in?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So
have you testified
I think
before,
you saw
the Ocean Township Board before?
Before you know.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit
I'm
about
a licensed
your
architect.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey since 2011. My architectural license is currently in good standing. I'm the architect on this project. I think, as you saw, the dormer variance is, has a de minimis impact on the encroachments. I think the point that is being discussed right now regarding the garage is that if you look at the drawings and photographs of the garage, it's a board and batten siding, and that is the structure. The siding is the structure. There's no stud framing inside of that siding, and the board and batten is rotting. It's deleterious. The garage is starting to harbor vermin. I think my clients would have been very fine to repair the siding, but we can't take the siding off because that's the structure. So essentially, in order to support this building, we need to build a stud wall inboard of that siding and then clad the new stud wall. So at the end of the day, this new structure will be the same exact, it's obviously going to be built on the existing footprint, but the same bulk and configuration of the existing structure.
Do you have any architecturals of what it's going to look like when it's finished?
There's the drawings we provided are section drawings through the structure, and the understanding will be that it will look from the exterior exactly like it looks today. The board and batten will match the same profile and pattern. It'll be the same asphalt roof, the same pitch on the roof, the exact same height that roof springs from, the exact same ridge height. I think we're going to take our architectural cues from exactly what is there and replace the physical structure from the exterior that you will all see exactly as it is. The only difference will be there'll be a stud wall inboard of the board and batten siding.
Okay.
So basically, it's a significant safety improvement.
Yes, sir.
All right, with that being said, any questions from the board members? No questions from the board members? Is there anyone from the public that would like to be heard on this application?
Yes, my name is Ray Hodnett. I'm a neighbor. I was notified about the application. I'm in favor of the application. I discussed the parameters of what they were doing with the applicants, and I would just like to say, a little bit of background. Everything that these applicants have done on the property has been a vast improvement to their house and to the neighborhood.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Anyone else from the public like to be heard? If not, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the hearing. Malta?
Second, Beal.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Steinberg, can you sum it up?
Yes, the applicant's requesting a front yard setback and rear yard setback to raise a portion of the house to a second floor dormer, all of which will be on the same footprint, so there are no changes in the existing setbacks. The same for the garage. The garage is in a state of substantial disrepair. The applicant wants to replace it as to the same size, finish, height, pitch, etc., and at the same location, which requires some setback variances also.
Thank you, sir. I need a board member with a positive.
I'll move, Malta, I'll move for a positive resolution in part on the persuasive testimony of Mr. Hodnett.
I'll second.
Sir. Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Good luck to Mr. McAfee. Please call Amy tomorrow, our board secretary, for any paperwork required and so forth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Best of luck. All right, our very, very last case for tonight. Mr. Oren Linder, are you present?
Yes, sir, I am.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, guys.
Mr. Oren Linder, block 40.03, lot 3, 608 Deal Road, Ocean, New Jersey, zone R3. This is an applicant to keep a fence/wall combo with a 10-foot height and 6-foot maximum is permitted, as well for a yard setback of an existing basketball court. We have with him tonight his attorney, Mr. Thomas Hirsch Esquire. Mr. Hirsch, you here?
He just stepped off camera for a sec.
Gotcha. Mr. Linder, are you going to testify tonight?
I'm going to follow my instruction of my lawyer.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry. For some reason, I wasn't unmuting when I was hitting it.
Mr. Hirsch, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you again, Marks. Thank you. For the record, Thomas J. Hirsch, representing the applicant, Oren Linder.
Will you be testifying on behalf of your applicant?
Well, depending where we head with this case, which I'll explain when we open up, Mr. Linder may testify, and Mr. May is luckily our replacement engineer, as Mr. Lieber, our original engineer, had a conflict tonight. So did Mr. May. But as a couple of days ago, his conflict went away, so he was able to appear tonight. So that would be, what parties would be testifying.
Okay, sir. Do you want to give us an introduction?
Why don't we, I think, Jim, I think it would be easier, I think, if Jim Higgins were to give us reports. We should enter the packet. We keep forgetting to do this now. Packet should be entered in evidence. Amy?
I've been doing it, yeah, sir.
Okay, we haven't done that all night. A packet is entered in. We can enter the board's packet into evidence, and maybe Jim can give us a report.
Yeah, I'll give you a report. There was an email by Mr. Lieber late today that changed some of the aspects of the proposed wall, which I'll briefly explain, or like Ben can explain it, since it's probably more of an engineering issue than it is a planning issue. But I will read the report in so the board gets the understanding of the application. The applicant is requesting approval to construct a retaining wall and fence around an existing swimming pool. The retaining wall will be 4 feet high at its highest point, and the fence is proposed to be a solid 6-foot high fence. In addition, the applicant is requesting to reconstruct an existing basketball court that was constructed without permits and violates the required front yard setback. The variances of front yard setback of an accessory structure. The ordinance requires that accessory structures, including pools, patios, decks, etc., maintain the required 45-foot front yard setback. The existing basketball court is set back 31 feet, and the proposal is to reduce its size to 20 foot wide and 30 feet long and increase the setback to 41 feet. While the proposed court does not extend beyond the front facade of the residence, I see no positive reason for the granting of the variance. The applicant should explain why the basketball court must be 30 feet long, since it is a half-court basketball court. If it were reduced to 24 feet long, it would conform. Since the southern end of the court abuts the existing fence that extends from the rear of the residence to the side property line, it's not practical to extend the court any further in a southerly direction. And you have the combined height of a wall and fence. The ordinance limits the height of a combined wall fence to 6 feet when they are closer than 10 feet to one another. The plan proposes a 4-foot high retaining wall and a 6-foot high fence. It should be noted that the ordinance allows a 4-foot high fence surrounding a swimming pool, so if the fence were reduced to 4 feet high, the magnitude of the variance would be significantly reduced. I have several concerns regarding the plan as shown. Variance plan sheet 1 of 2 shows the fence being located in the rear property line, which is an existing condition, and the retaining wall being located 5 feet from the property line. Apparently, there's going to be testimony about that being changed, just so the board is aware. And the details show the fence being located directly adjacent to the wall. This needs to be clarified. It makes much more sense for the fence to be located adjacent to the wall and the landscaping to be located between the fence and the property line. In addition, the plan shows a retaining wall with a geogrid layer, which will likely extend to the property to the rear. It also proposes landscaping between the wall and the rear property line. Since the geogrid is also located in this area, does not appear to
I
be.
don't know if anybody can hear me.
Landscaping. What? Who's speaking?
This Tom Hirsch is speaking, and you're cutting out, Jim. All of a sudden it freezes, and I can't hear anything you're saying.
Okay. Okay. Do you have my report, Tom? Because I'm just basically reading the report. Does anybody else have that problem?
Tom, it's on your end that you're freezing. Jim Higgins is not. You're still frozen.
Yeah, I'm hearing Jim fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I was hearing him, but then all of a sudden it just froze, like his face froze, and there was no audio. And then the audio came on, and then it went out again. So I don't know what
It's on you. It's on
I
your
don't
end.
have one of my grandchildren here. I can't figure it out.
Okay, well, I'll finish reading the report. Can you hear me now, Tom?
I got and Jim, I've read the report, so I'm not concerned. I do appreciate that, and I am familiar.
In the public. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I understand.
With regard to the landscaping, the plan states the area above the wall to be planted with evergreen trees such as green giant arborvitae, as discussed with the township and neighboring lot owner. This is very vague. The green giant arborvitae are deer food, and I recommend that this area be planted with columnar holly trees, a minimum of 5 feet in height and 6 feet on centers. This will provide a solid screen of plants that are deer resistant. It should also be noted that the fence facing the front of the property appears to exceed the maximum 6 foot height, the main portion of the fence by several inches and the posts by approximately a half foot. The applicant should be prepared to discuss this with the board and suggest any adequate remedies to this situation. And I understand that the applicant's engineer is going to suggest an amendment as far as to the type of wall that's going to be constructed and the location of the wall.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Matlock, our engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand there is a great deal of history with this property. It goes back several years, and it involves removal of trees on the adjoining property to install some of the improvements that were not permitted. So we're here to try and remedy everything. There was a letter prepared by the former board engineer, Mr. Fitzgerald, that recommended different types of retaining walls. My understanding, the township had a preference of what type of wall they were looking for, and as Mr. Higgins said, there's been a late modification to the plan. So the applicant's engineer will have to explain to the board what changes are being made to the plan, what type of wall, the location of the wall, and the installation of screening and plantings, and how this wall is going to be basically a defining line on the property line, which is going to delineate the backyards for both the subject property and the neighbor to the rear. And I think there was a minor issue we had with some of the grading on the applicant's side of the wall. Just needed to be cleaned up, make sure there's no low spots, and that's the gist of it. We'll look to hear, like I said, some testimony regarding the wall, and then also if there are trees to be planted, how are they going to be maintained and accessed?
Thank you, Mr. Matlock. Mr. Hirsch.
Yes, thank you. So, yes, there has been some history, and I want to try to focus on first, the zoning issues. All right, what the application's about, which is, as indicated on the agenda, it's an application to rebuild a retaining wall and maintain the existing fence, which is on top of the wall. And I can discuss in a moment these issues Jim raised about whether the existing fence in some areas are some inches higher or whatever. We'll get to that. But the real question is, the fence is proposed at 6 feet, which would be the normal permitted height for a rear yard fence. Obviously, it's on a retaining wall, so its total measurement from grade is at 10 feet as to that issue. Which we'll get to in a minute. We submitted some photographs, and there is one showing the neighbor to the rear's property and the fence. The only point of that is the neighbor does not see a 10-foot fence. The reason is obviously the drastic difference in grade between the two properties. The neighbor backyard looks at, subject to what Jim said, a 6-foot fence, which is what hundreds and hundreds of properties do in Ocean Township and every township or municipality. So it's a 6-foot fence on the rear property line as to the neighbor's view. And that's important for a couple of reasons. I mean, the neighbor has a patio, I believe, in that general area. The applicant has a pool on the other side of the retaining wall. There's only, I believe, like it's a 10 feet separation from the edge of the pool to the rear property line. So the proposed 6-foot fence, we believe, benefits both sides, is creating more privacy, especially when you have a lot that looks down on another lot. So anyway, that's the general gist of the fence and the height issue. I can make life easy on the basketball court. When I first got involved, that basketball court had been constructed and it violated a side yard setback. And as I understood it, the violation was it was also partially in the front yard. I recommended to the applicant that he go ahead and cut it back so it wouldn't need a variance. He did in fact do that, and he cut it back approximately 2 feet behind the front of the house. On the front side, got rid of the side yard, as you can tell, as the only variance is the front yard. However, that's still what we were missing is, although it wasn't in the front yard as defined by your ordinance, it did violate the front yard setback, even though the house already violates the front yard setback. And we were a couple of feet behind the house. So to make life easy, the client will cut back the court so it meets the 45 feet. I think it's at 41 or 42 now from the front yard setback, and it's about 2 feet behind the front facade of the house. But if that's an issue, as suggested in Mr. Higgins' report, we're not going to fight over it. We'll cut it back a few more feet, so it's 45 feet, and now be actually 5 feet behind the front of the house. So that'll resolve the one variance that's part of this application tonight. Now, the question of the wall, and we do, as I said, Mr. May is filling in for Mr. Lieber. We've been going around quite some time to try to achieve what would be the best design for this wall. So this involves taking down the existing wall and building the new wall. And the idea was to try to build a wall that the current wall is right on the rear property line, but clearly you couldn't repair it or get to it because it's on the property line. It's not set back off the property line. And of course, that wall was built without a permit. There are some pictures which we can show you about when my client bought the property, the wall had already, a good portion of it had fallen apart. I think a lot of the damage was done by erosion after Sandy. And so when he became the owner of the property, he wanted to, of course, replace, that wall and shore the land up behind it, which has caused some of the other collateral problems between property owners. So the proposal that the engineers came up with was a block wall using what they call a geogrid system, which essentially ties back behind the wall down into the ground to provide the support. The plan that was filed and that Mr. Higgins reviewed showed the wall to be set back 5 feet from the rear property line. And the embedment where it went underground to be 4 feet. There was disagreement with that between Mr. Fitzgerald at the time and Mr. Lieber as to the extent to which the geogrid would actually have to extend back and whether it in fact reached the rear property line. You have to keep in mind that the applicant is working in a 10-foot area. You know, he's got the pool and the rear property line. And retaining wall, obviously, I mean, there's no question, but that it's required, you know, because of the grades of the two lots. You know, just got to be there. So trying to design the wall to not affect the pool, not affect the rear property line is not the easiest of things. So we did see Mr. Fitzgerald's, I guess, kind of attempt to help volunteer a report, even though he's no longer the board engineer, with some other designs. And we looked at those. And there was some indication to us that the first concept of which had a certain kind of block was preferred. But we discussed it with a structural engineer, and they felt that those blocks are too heavy and too big for this type of residential structure. So we still believe, because ultimately, in speaking with Mr. Fitzgerald, he said he didn't really care what the wall was, as long as it, you know, was certified by an engineer in the plan, the grading was appropriate, and all the other items. And it worked, and there was enough, he said, at least, you know, approximately a couple of foot setback from the rear property line. That was his major concern. How it ended, how it was designed, or the color and the type of block wasn't so much the critical issue. So, unfortunately, and we only got those designs, by the way, August 11th, just so everybody's aware of this. My engineer, Mr. Lieber, called a structural engineer today, this afternoon, discussing these alternatives, and gave him the information for the geogrid wall that we were proposing. The structural engineer said that's not going to work because it'll be, the load bearing will be too close to the pool, which is a steel wall pool, not a concrete wall. So he said it would be too dangerous that that pool could collapse, that wall, because of that design. So we had a structural engineer certify the wall previously, that the wall itself was structurally sound, in other words. But he did not take into account the pool and the fact that it's a steel frame pool, and therefore the impact of that much weight on the pool. Additionally, even as Mr. Higgins pointed out in his initial report, burying the geogrid embedment part would interfere with any plantings behind the wall. You know, would have interfered with the root systems. So we sort of quickly went back to the drawing board, and that's what was mentioned earlier, that Mr. Lieber, in coordination with a contractor, submitted a design of a wall that has been used successfully in various areas, that and we can put the photos up in a minute. You can see what it looks like. And the design, and, you know, I'm not an engineer. Our engineer can discuss it. It's somewhat described in the covering email sent by Mr. Lieber. You know, but this wall would be 18 inches from the lot line. No geogrid is involved. So there are no conflicts with the fence posts. Essentially, to explain it simply, the installation wall is accomplished by arguing round footings 4 feet below grade. The steel posts are H-shaped and set in the holes, and the hole filled in with concrete. Prefabricated wall panels slide in between the posts. So, as he thought, it's tasteful in appearance. blends in with the property, and that absorbs the weight of the wall, and hence it would not affect the pool. And I'll let, when Mr. May gets sworn in, our engineer, he can put the photos of what this type of wall would look like. So we think it's a good fix. We think it works well. The question then becomes plantings, all right? Obviously, my client would have preferred plantings to cover up the fence wall, but there's not enough room in our view. And Jim we're happy to listen to recommendations, but if we're talking 1.5 feet,
Yeah.
nothing substantial, I mean, some bushes or whatever, could be planted. As I said, even if you had trees and you were planting them, whether on the other side of the wall or between the wall and the fence, it's not going to affect what the neighbor sees. I mean, they're going to be on our side. We're going to be looking at those trees. And as I said, the neighbor sees a 6-foot fence, like they would in any neighborhood. So it's not like the neighbor is getting some adverse impact because this is a quote unquote 10-foot fence, because the neighbor doesn't see a 10-foot fence. So that's just some of the overall considerations that the board will have. We're happy to listen to Mr. Matlack and Jim's input. But I think this particular wall, works and, can accomplish what everybody's trying to accomplish with stabilizing this area. So that's the zoning issues. Okay. Height of the fence on the wall, basketball court, which we've done away with. There's no variance needed for a retaining wall. Retaining wall is allowed. Okay. It's the fence height that's the problem. Of course, that doesn't mean a retaining wall doesn't have to be approved construction-wise in terms of its, integrity and by a structural engineer, and naturally that would all be supplied. But the wall itself is not a variance. In fact, if the wall is under 4 feet, it doesn't even need a permit from the construction department under your ordinance. I think that's probably the BOA code also, but this is over that 4 foot, not much, but it is over that. Originally, the applicant thought he didn't need a permit because of that under 4 foot, but he was not measuring that correctly. So that's why the wall has to come down. We're not arguing that, the existing wall, because it was not structurally approved with any calculations, and it needed that because it's over 4 feet. And plus, it is right on the property line, and there's no room at all behind it. So for those reasons, we need to put a wall up. We want, as you can see, the fence, there's a pool, so there has to be a fence. I know Jim points out you only need 4 feet, but the real point here is the only reason we're at 10 feet is because of the topography of the lot. And really, it's our position that there's no adverse impact on the neighbor, and maybe preferable to the neighbor to have the higher fence to block views of her property and her looking down and the noise from the other property. So there seems to be more benefits than detriments to that particular issue. So with that overview, I'd like to call our engineer, Mr. May. Understanding Mr. May has been to the property, I will go through that with him. He has gone through this with Mr. Lieber, even though he's only been able to get involved in the last couple of days. But he's not the designer, so you're aware of the wall, which we'll show in the photographs. It was briefly discussed with our structural engineer, who said, yes, he would be able to provide the plan and certify, that type of wall. He's familiar with it. That obviously would all have to be done as conditions of anything that's going to be done out there. So with that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a question for Jim. Okay. So the fence height is 6 feet. Is the wall adjacent to the fence? That's why we need the variance?
Yeah, because they're within 10 feet of each other.
Yes. Okay. So the actual fence is not sitting on top of the wall.
No.
It's adjacent to it.
No, that's correct.
Okay. And it is on the inside of the
outside. The wall is on the inside of the fence.
That's what I meant. So the real property line would first be the fence that we see.
Yeah.
We see a picture of the white vinyl fence.
Yeah.
That's going to stay? Does that stay?
That's what we have to clear up, whether that white vinyl fence is going to stay on the property line or whether it's going to be directly adjacent to the wall.
Well, but he's telling us the wall's going to be
How to handle
18.
that 1 point,
Right.
18-inch area.
At this point, he's proposing the wall 18 inches from the rear property line.
Yeah.
Right.
And then,
Not sure where the fence is proposed.
and then the fence.
Yeah.
Mark, I think practically speaking, I don't see how, and we've got Mike from Blue Creek here looking in, who's a construction guy. I would believe at some point that the fence would have to come down while they're reconstructing the wall. Okay. It wouldn't be a fence there for that point in time. It would be staged out safely.
Right. But the actual proposal at some point is to restore the fence to its almost current location, I guess. And then the wall inside of it.
Yeah.
Correct.
And the reason you need a variance is because if anything is a wall and a fence are within 10 feet of each other, you put them as if they're on top.
That's correct.
Zoning wise. Okay. I just want to make sure that I understand that. Okay. Thank you.
So Jim's comments about whether the current fence is in some areas a few inches or the post is a little bit higher, it's got to come down and be put back so it'll be resolved. I mean, it'll, at that point, it would, in terms of you suggested a resolution, what would we propose? I mean, the fence will have to meet the requirement of 6 feet if the board allows that 6 foot fence, i.e. by allowing the variance that adds up to 10. Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Chairman, could I, if we're asking a couple of questions of our professionals, since they gave their reports, could I ask a quick question?
Sure. I was hoping they're going to put up the fencing and have the engineer testify, but go ahead. Go ahead and ask a question.
Just because, just as far as process goes, we have the report from Mr. Fitzgerald. And I'm wondering, Mr. Matlack, have you been able to check out the site yourself? There's a couple of pictures that are attached to Fitzgerald's report from one side of the fence. I'm trying to figure out if that's the neighbor's side or if that's the applicant's side, and then what's going on in those pictures.
Yeah, that's the neighbor's side of the fence. I believe those pictures were taken, after the construction of the pool and construction of the wall, and showed some issues on the neighboring property. I haven't been there recently, but that's my understanding from Mr. Fitzgerald's report, and I know Mr. Fitzgerald was involved with this for a long time with the applicant and the neighbor. So that's why he prepared this report. I don't know if it was at the request of the township or he just offered it, but given his history with this situation, I made reference to his report in my review letter because there was a lot of information in there that I felt the board needed to have.
It might be of some help to Mr. Fuller, to you and to the board. We submitted some photos. I don't know if Amy can share them or not. There's a total of 7, but photo 7 is the view of the neighbor's side of the fence currently, as opposed to what it was back, when the retaining wall fell down. We have pictures of what the yard looked like then also, which was years ago. That might give you some sense, of what the neighbor's looking at and how the neighbor's lot is now set up. All right, to give you perspective. If we can, I don't know if Amy can show that, or maybe I can have Mr. May do it. I don't know.
Mr. May could do it.
We're going to need to, is there going to be the applicant's exhibits 1 through 7?
Yeah, there's photos 1 through 7. And I'm just right now referring to photo 7, which is the view, because Mr. Fuller's question, I thought it might help answer that question in terms of how it currently looks.
Are we going to label these A1 through 7, or how do you want to do it?
whatever you want. I mean, well, A1 is that the packet or is that the board's B1? I don't know how you do the packet you mark, but
Packet B for board, A is for applicant.
yeah, okay. Sometimes they considered that the applicants. All right. So, yeah, I mean, it can be, just A2, A, B, C, D, E, or, you can give them each.
It's up to you, but you just need to describe them. I think we can mark the, Amy, mark in the 7 photos as A1, A through A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A through G, and you can tell us what each one is, okay? As they appear.
All right. Joe, you there?
Yeah, I'm trying. Something just happened here.
All right. That's what
Bear with
I wasn't
me.
sure who was trying to do that.
Okay. Oops, scared. Sorry about that.
Sure.
Joe, are you going to testify?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And your qualifications, have you been before Ocean Township before?
I don't recall if I've been in front of your board, Mr. Chairman, but quick recap. I'm a graduate of NJIT, design engineer for CME from 1994 to 2004. I worked for Short Palma from 2004 to 2009. In 2004, I got my New Jersey professional engineering license. I'm currently associate with East Point Engineering and currently the borough engineer of Spring Lake Heights. I've been the borough engineer of Keensburg, the planning board engineer in Keensburg, the zoning board engineer in Keensburg, the zoning board engineer in the borough of Highlands, conflict engineer for the borough of Long Branch, city of Long Branch, and also the planning board engineer in the borough of Spring Lake Heights.
Thank you, sir, and you are qualified. Go ahead.
I'm going to try to share the photos that Tom spoke about. So just we're going to.
Amy,
the first photo will
sharing
be.
capability. Amy, can you?
I did.
Thank you.
Okay. Go here, share screen. Okay. Can everybody see that photo?
Nope.
Nope.
Nothing.
How about now?
There we go.
Okay, which is this the 7 or this is the first?
This is
number 1.
So this would be 1A.
Yeah.
Can
Yes,
you describe
correct.
what 1A is?
Yeah, this is the existing conditions of the site prior to the wall being constructed. This would be facing westerly along the rear property line.
This is the applicant's rear property line? We're on the applicant's
Yes.
property now?
Yes,
Okay.
you're on the applicant's property.
And when was, how old is this photo approximately?
I would say this is, I believe this is in May of 2017.
Okay, that's 1A. Okay.
Okay, going then down further. Okay.
You had it. There you go.
Let me zoom out a little bit if that helps you. There we go.
That's
This
1B?
is that's B.
1B.
Along the same wall.
This was again taken in 2017?
Yes.
Okay.
These first 4 photos are all on the same day.
Okay.
These are taken by the applicant, by the way, who is here, can verify it, but we're trying to move this along a little bit.
That's okay. I just want to label them. Next one.
Another photo looking down the same wall, further to the east. The photos taken looking west again.
And this would be 1C?
Yes.
Yes. And the last existing conditions photo prior to any work being done on the property shows the condition of the retaining wall, the vegetation or that was there at the time. You can see some was leaning, falling in both directions. And it also appears that the neighbor's fence is also leaning over into the property, the chain link fence.
Yeah, this would be 1D, right? Again, 2017.
Yeah, circa May 2017.
Okay.
This photo was taken today. Looking,
one E. Okay.
Okay, that's what the applicant sees walking into the backyard. And then that's a photo from his home, or as close to the home as you can get, looking back at the rear property line.
That's 1F.
And the last photo is a photo looking at essentially what the neighbor sees from their
How did
perspective.
he get that? How did he get that?
Ma'am, it's not time yet. You're not under oath. What that would be, what you're labeling is 1G. Okay, who took that?
My associate did.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, okay, Mark, I've got a question. Doesn't someone have to have permission to enter someone else's property to enter something as evidence?
Well, we're assuming that they entered. We don't know if they just took it from off-site. We don't know who took it or what it depicts.
Look, folks, if you don't want to mark it, we won't mark it. It's simply trying to help the board understand what the current conditions are. So,
well, why don't we mark it as 1G, not in evidence, but we'll mark it as 1G. Let's see if there's any complaints about putting it into evidence later, okay? Well, 1G for identification.
all right. Thanks, Mark. Anyway, the purpose was, as we indicated, you saw the photos at the time the applicant became the owner of the property, the condition, and then they were just trying to show what existed today. And because of Mr. Farrell's question, I thought it would be helpful to get some idea of the view of the rear property. All right. Mr. May was sworn, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. All right. I know, Joe, you gave your qualifications. And just by way of quick background, I know you've been involved relatively recently. So can you tell the board exactly, what you've been able to do in terms of viewing the site and what information you were able to obtain through Mr. Lieber to get us to this point tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I was brought to this application relatively short time ago. At any rate, we did a site visit today, and in reviewing the planner's letter, Mr. Fitzgerald's letter, and Mr. Matlack's letter, we were trying to make sure that our plan accomplished everything that the board and the board professionals were looking to see. During a site visit, trying to accomplish that, we had some concerns about the geogrid, the plantings, and then the pool issue arose. And that's where it was decided that we need to contact our structural professional and find out what issues we really have here with this proposed modular block wall versus an alternative. All that being said, in a nutshell, the structural engineer recommended a soldier beam and lagging style wall, which would not impact the neighbor's property, not require excessive disturbance to a neighbor's property should there be repairs or replacement of it, and also at the same time have no impact or adverse effects structurally on the in-ground pool. So that is what we're looking to propose as far as the wall goes.
So you're offering this as A2, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You said it's a soldier beam and what?
Yeah, that's a common term. It's called soldier beam and lagging. It's basically an H-beam in a concrete sonotube that's scored into the ground.
I'm missing, maybe because we're on Zoom. Soldier beam I could get. What was the second word? And
lagging, L-A-G-G-I-N-G.
Okay. I assume it's an engineering term. Okay. But that's the fence you proposed, but that would be installed 18 inches off the rear property line.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Mr. May, I know it was kind of mentioned before. I was a little confused by what was said. The pool is constructed of a steel wall. Is that on the sides? And the weight from the retaining wall would affect the pool? Is that
The structural engineer was concerned about the cone of influence, exactly the lateral pressures of that wall, Jay, so close to that pool. It would be a little under, it was like 46 inches. And not being totally familiar with how the pool is constructed, but understanding it's a steel wall with a vinyl liner, he wasn't confident that it was a good idea to put a modular block wall right next to the pool.
And the wall that is currently there that was shown in those photos, what is that wall made of?
That's a modular block wall that has a interlocking system with it.
And so that has a geogrid?
No, it does not.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And the wall that you're proposing now, how is it possible to gain a little bit of space so it's not right up on the property line within 18 inches? Can it be moved closer to the pool, or does it have to be right where you're proposing it?
Well, we would like to move it as far away from the pool as we can. It would be best if we could do that, for constructability, because I would probably envision that portion of this wall be built in coordination with taking down the other wall, so there's not an issue with the dirt coming down. So that's one reason. It would be at least 18 inches away. We'd be afraid to take that existing modular block wall down and have a rain event, and then we could possibly lose that upper grade. So 18 inches was decided, keep it as far away from the pool as you could, just for practical purposes, and as well as be able to do both, take the wall down and build a new one at the same time.
Okay, so there are a couple of things with that. The size of the foundation of the wall you're proposing, if that is more than 36 inches, then the foundation ends up being on the neighboring property line. And then there's also a consideration for the fence that you're proposing on top of the wall. If that has foundation, concrete foundation, where do those posts land and possible foundations in relation to the property line. There's that, and there's also the concern that was brought up in the August 3rd letter, that it looks like the backfill that was used to build the wall that's currently in place is could have some construction debris in it. It's my understanding that could have been old blocks from the previous wall used just to make the grade. Can that be incorporated into the design, that all of that material be removed?
I really not sure how that falls into the design. I mean, if we encounter material during the removal of the wall, sure, we would take it out. I think maybe it would be best served if there's a site meeting to kind of understand what that comment exactly means. I wasn't there at that time. I don't want to really testify to what was buried. From what I see now, it looks like grass. I did see that photo from Mr. Fitzgerald's letter from right after construction, but I really don't know, how do we accomplish that? Is that by hand digging? I'm not sure, and I'm not saying the applicant objects to that. I just don't know.
That's fair.
I'm the best person to comment on that.
That's fair. I just want to understand if that type of material is encountered, could that be removed? And
yes, absolutely. If there's remnants of the old wall of the entire wall be removed in its entirety that the applicant placed in, and if we see anything other than standard bank run sand and gravel, to be removed. And with regard to your question with the size of the footings, this was a quite brief conversation with the structural engineer and with the wall designer today, and that's the number that was discussed. I would request that until the formal plan is submitted to the board, that that be we'll get it reviewed by yourself and make sure that it meets any requirements that for the fence foundation as well as the soldier beam foundations that aren't on the neighbor's property.
Right. So my concern is that I would prefer that the foundations land within the property of the
Yes, yeah, they absolutely will. And I think at this point, we're saying 18, it may be 20, maybe 22, it may be 16. I mean, I'm not sure what that number is until it's designed, but I will testify that there'll be no structural components on the neighbor's property.
Okay, thank you.
There is one other photo of what this wall would look like finished, obviously from, another site. If the board would care to see that, that was sent to the board. We can show that on screen.
Please put that up, yes.
Yes, okay. Can you see that, folks?
Yes.
That would be A3, I believe, right?
Yes.
What will be the finished height of this fence?
Height of the wall?
Height of the wall fence.
The wall.
Yes.
The wall will be 4 feet.
Okay, so there's no fence going on top of this?
No,
this is another site.
Showing what the wall looks like, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, just asking a question.
Yep.
Fence will go on top of the wall. And Ben, did you ask how they're going to, if it's only 18 inches from the property line, how they're going to do this without encroaching on the adjacent property?
Right. That was what I had asked, and I believe it was answered that the plan would, while it's not fully designed yet, the testimony was that they would make sure there are no structural components of the wall or the fence on the neighbor's property.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the structural components, though. I'm talking about the actual physical doing the construction. Will they be able to do this without going onto the adjacent property?
Mike's here. The contractor's here, Jim. Maybe Mike could be sworn in. Mike, can you shed some light on that? If you can, we'll have you sworn. You're muted.
Unmute. Hi, sorry. Hi, good evening.
All right, Mike, could you shed some light on that?
Wait.
No, I just want to know if he could, then swear him. Go ahead.
Mike, can you please raise your right hand?
Yes,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And please tell me your representation to this application.
I'd like to give you guys some information regarding the wall if you have any questions.
Can we get his name? Say his name for the record, please.
My name is Mike Kakiashvili.
Spell your last.
Kakiashvili.
And
I just give you briefly a background of that, that you're a contractor and so on and so forth. So they have some idea of your knowledge of this.
I'm a contractor originally back in the day, I was a mason. I've done many retaining walls, probably over 300,000 or 400,000 square feet of retaining walls and large developments. And I have much knowledge with this stuff. And I've seen my work now from 15 years ago that I have done. And I have much information on that.
All right, so there was a question raised about by Mr. Higgins as to if this is going to be in the neighborhood. I don't think we know it exactly, but we're proposing 18 inches. How does a workforce, how are they able to install this wall without encroaching into the neighbor's property?
So what happened today, actually, after lunch, I spoke to Mark Lieber, and he had mentioned that there is an issue that with the pool and so on. and he mentioned that the items that needed to be done. So actually, I was the person that initially suggested, why not build this wall like this? And then throughout the day, went and followed up with structural engineer. I think it's a very simple wall to build. What we would do is once an engineer is going to design this wall, only really to determine where those I-beams and how far of a distance from each other would they need to be. Those might not need anything more than 18 inches of footing around them. We might want to go 5 feet deep just to make it easier so there is not large footing. We might be able to install them every 6 feet, maybe every 8, or maybe every 10. We will use a hand auger right on the applicant's property. We will drill a hole. We will drop an I-beam inside. We will not need any large equipment. I have very strong guys, maybe that's why. We will not need an auger. We will not need any machines. We will put the I-beam inside. We will pour the concrete around them. And once that's done, the following day we will come and we will do section by section. We may use 6x6 railroad ties. We might need to use 8x8. We may not even need to do anything this size. What we will do is between each I-beam, we will come from inside of the applicant's property. We will slide them down into the I-beam. And once that section is done, we will take care of that from the inside. We will bring a small bobcat. We will backfill that with gravel, probably put some pipe just for additional pressure relief if necessary ever. And that's about it. Everything will be done by hand from the inside.
Thanks, Mike. I know, Jim, that addressed your question. I don't know if anybody has any other questions that as the contractor could help you with.
Then how do you put the fence on the other side of that?
Well, the fence will have to be up on a wall to install the fence. I mean, at that point, there is not, unfortunately, not much. Hopefully, the neighbor and the rear can authorize the fence company to go and install it. And I'm sure they would need to clean up around the post hole when they're going to dig and pour concrete around the post.
So the answer is you have to go on the neighbor's property for the white fence.
To install the fence just to make sure that that section of it is cleaned up. They're going to dig that with a post hole digger just by hand. They're going to install the post and put the fence. Do they have to? No, but probably just to make sure everything is cleaned up.
And Mark, remember, we're talking about removing that existing fence. So they have to, if there's any debris there or portions of the fence, on the property line, that they got to be removed. So that's why they're suggesting for that period, there would have to be some access. Potentially, and maybe it can be done without it. I don't know, but it would, likely there might be some.
Can I say something, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
As we will be removing the existing retaining walls, I'm sure that since we are moving this wall 18 inches farther, there will be a void, and some of the dirt we will probably find, if there is any debris there, we will probably find any debris as we are moving the retaining walls. Some stuff probably is going to slide down and we will have to move it.
How are you going to compact the soil behind the retaining wall?
Probably will not compact. I will probably fill the whole thing with gravel, sir, which would, once we pour it even out of the bucket, it's considered to be at 96% capacity.
And the top will be finished with topsoil?
Yes, we will probably most likely would put landscape paper in the rear right before putting the gravel, cover that, 6 inches of soil, and or maybe even 12 inches. So if the applicant would like to install some small landscaping just for color for the summer, he'll have the opportunity.
Okay.
Is there any questions from the board members to this testimony of this expert?
Mr. Worrell, I have a question, which is all of the paperwork that's been provided were always with concrete solutions to this problem. My question really is, what is the life expectancy of a wood wall in comparison to a concrete solution? I just would like, look, we're trying to get a permanent solution here and never, ever, ever have to come back.
Good question.
So nothing is forever, unfortunately, and I'm sure you know that, Ron, you have much experience in this field also. There is nothing that stays forever, so I cannot testify that that will be forever. But there is definitely couple options. These I-beams will have to be hot dip galvanized. This way they will last longer. That's one thing I would definitely guarantee that. Well, I wouldn't guarantee, I don't know if I'll be here to deal with it then, but I will assume that they will be there, at least the I-beams, for at least 30 or 40 years once they are hot dipped galvanized. Secondly, regarding the wood, we would be using most likely 6x6 railroad ties. And because there is all this gravel behind it and no moisture will be sitting against that wall, it could last 30 or 40 years easily. If somebody thinks any differently, we could use a different type of lumber, which is more for, using it in water and salt water and so on. So we could use that type of lumber, and that will give it probably another 15, 20 years acceptance.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Mr. Hirsch, do you want to wrap it up? Do you have anything else?
No, as I said, we've done away with the issue on the basketball court. So the question really, in terms of the variance relief we're seeking, is the 10-foot, which I've explained. And Mr. Steinberg himself has gone through clarifying why it is 10 feet. So that's the variance we're looking for. In terms of the wall, obviously, if this wall is acceptable, which, as I said, technically it's not a variance for the wall, but assuming we're working together on this, it would be subject to our submitting, a report from a structural engineer with a plan approved by the structural engineer, finishing some of the details that we've been generally discussing because of the late nature of getting into this particular design to, for the board engineer's review, of course, and, and approval. So those details would be submitted, and that would determine the ultimate setback from the rear property line. If it's 18 inches or 24 inches or whatever, so we expect those types of conditions on all details. Mr. Matlack on the other wall mentioned there needed to be some grading issues. There would have to be grading plan, a new grading plan for this wall that would have to be approved by your engineer, that the grades make sense. So anything else like that, I don't want to dictate. I mean, Mr. Matlack can tell us, whatever other conditions, what information he wants, but we anticipate that all being submitted. It might even be helpful, and I'll leave it up to the board and its professionals, that if this is approved, we establish a technical review meeting after the fact to go over some of this. Perhaps that would help, or we can just have our structural engineer submit these revised plans with all the details and the grading that on the plan that we believe would be required. So that's the issue on the on the plan and on the wall and the fence itself. In terms of the any debris, as we said, as this wall is removed, any debris that is found will be removed, and disposed of appropriately. I don't know what else we can, see, as you talked about in an early application, directing things to be done on someone else's property is, generally speaking, not the purview of the board, and the board usually doesn't want to get involved in something like that. But we early on this, when we had a tech review, we were trying to cooperate. We understand the other neighbor, had concerns and believed certain things were done improperly. And I won't get into the factual arguments on either side of that. But if there's going to be some discussion, it has to be by a private agreement between the parties where access will be allowed. If there's going to be, an agreement to dig any other test hole to see if there was any other debris, that's got to be between the property owners, and we're willing to cooperate, but it's really not part of a zoning case. I just want to, so we don't go down the wrong road with that. And, that should be by temporary construction easements, agreements, that who's going to do what, to make sure everybody can finally put all these concerns and angst that they've had for some years to rest. And all right. So anyway, I'm trying to keep that separate. That's why I said I want to talk about the zoning, what this board is being tasked to approve tonight, which is a height fence variance, the basketball court's out, and the wall. It's really more of a construction issue, a building department issue, but we're willing to accept all the guidance that the board has and any conditions the board has in terms of ensuring that the proposed wall will be, satisfactory and beneficial to both properties.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch.
I just have a question, I guess, for Mr. Matlack, and that is, subject to what else we may hear tonight, if we were inclined to approve a variance, are you comfortable with having the variance subject to these other issues on the engineering in particular being straightened out, or would you rather have them, resolved up front? I've seen applications, either way. So I'm just, I'm not an engineer. I'm kind of relying on our experts to, confirm that this can be done in such a way that it's not going to create problems in the future. So I'm just looking for that guidance from you, Mr. Matlack. If you're comfortable with reviewing some of these technical details after the fact as a condition, I'd like to know that, or if you're not, I'd like to know that.
So that's a good question. Typically, minor engineering details can be worked out after the fact. In this case, it's a little tricky because there's testimony that the wall can't be too close to the pool. And then there's, limited space in between the property line and the pool where the wall can go. There's also the question raised about the life expectancy of the wall. Obviously, the original proposal of modular blocks, concrete lasts longer than wood. So I don't know if there's an alternate that could be submitted or contemplated of some sort of concrete in place of the wood, so that 30 years from now, we don't have to the wall doesn't need to be replaced. Both property owners may be gone by then, moved away or whatever. And then it might be somebody else's headache. I don't know if the contractor or the engineer can speak to that regarding the material, but I think it's the board's preference of whether or not you want to see the details and a revised plan showing exactly where the wall is going to go before you make an approval.
Well, so I can only speak for myself, but having heard what you had to say, and also you bring back to mind exactly. I understand Mr. Hirsch is working very hard to try and make this acceptable and reasonable to go. But it sounds like we're not even 100% sure whether we're talking about an 18-foot setback or a 16-foot, or I'm sorry, inch. 18 inches or 22 inches or so. I mean, just for myself, I think I'd feel more comfortable if the plans were revised before we made a decision so that we could have proper input from everyone. And I understand, I'm trying to look at this from everybody's point of view. I know some of the stuff, was put together recently and, it's hard to do all that, but, I'm more inclined to want to see more details and more specifics before I would vote on that.
If I might respond, I don't have any preference in terms of the board carrying the application and saying submit the plans, which we would be submitting as a condition if, you know, it was approved as a condition, you know, before they vote. The only two things I want to keep in mind is the board has to keep clearly in mind what variances we are seeking and what does not need a variance. But we are trying to give the board whatever we can in terms of detail. The only other consideration that I'll mention to the board, because it's been mentioned to me several times, there's been some sense of urgency that we went ahead with this application tonight. And so if we're going to submit, it's one thing to submit to an engineer with an approval to approve as a condition in terms of timing. Another thing for us to get on a new agenda and get reached again. So that is part of your consideration. I mean, clearly it's up to you tonight. I'm not going to fight or argue over it, you know, whether we need a variance or not. If you say you'd rather see these plans before you vote, so be it. But does that mean we won't get heard again for 3 months or whatever? I'm just pointing that out to you, so because we don't want the criticism that, you know, we didn't do anything. It was 4 months that took us to get on this agenda after we filed the application. So that's up to you. I mean, we'll accept whichever way you know, the board feels it wants to go on that.
And Russ, this has been a close to 4-year discussion. The board has previously voted to dismiss this application because of lack of action. So I'm asking you to allow our professionals to review whatever is. We're running out of time when it comes to having a permanent solution before cold weather comes in.
That's another consideration, how quickly we will be able to put it up, you know, in terms of weather.
Okay.
Mr. Hirsch,
Up to the board, you know, we're here to try to work with you.
do you think November 15th would be an unrealistic completion date?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear all of that.
Do you think November 15th, if this board approves, would be a reasonable completion date for this project?
Oh, to install a wall? Well, it's going to depend how quickly, you know, the submittals are approved, you know, by the board engineer, that we're all on the same page. But from that point, Mike, how long do you believe the construction would take, assuming we've agreed on the plan, it's approved, all that's out of the way? How long is it going to take to do this wall?
As far as doing the actual work, it's probably going to take about a week to a week and a half at most. Unfortunately, galvanizing steel right now, it's probably about, I'm experiencing quite a bit of delays on steel that I'm using right now. And you're probably looking at about 4 weeks just to get steel galvanized and delivered to us. So if it gets approved, we will try to get a plan to the town immediately, and hopefully we can go ahead and get this thing going.
So the construction roughly a week or so, but it's
a week and a half.
You know, with COVID and all the problems that have occurred with delivery of materials, that could take a few weeks, 4 weeks.
That is correct. Yes.
This wall has to be
that part we
inspected as
can't
well,
control.
correct? There's
I'm
also
sorry.
inspections required by the town along the way.
Sure.
So
I would guess the construction department.
In my town, we're
would
3 weeks behind. Just
I would attest. I would attest to the
Before
fact.
any decision is made,
Guys, either way, even if there is,
it might be a good idea for
Couldn't hear you, Jim.
I lost Jim.
Everybody's talking on top of everybody. Are there any other board members with questions? Okay. With that being said, I'd like to open it up to the public.
Yeah,
and see
can
if
we,
they have any-
Yeah, can we remove the pictures from the screen so we can see
Yeah.
see everybody? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that being said, is there anyone from the public that would like to be heard or question the experts?
I would.
And your name, please?
My name is Ellen Adis, and I am lot 12.
Correct. And your address, please?
As 46 Dwight Drive.
Okay.
As a point of information, I would like to note on the plans you submitted, it says as agreed to by neighbor. I'm the neighbor. I don't know what neighbor he discussed it with. It wasn't me. Second thing, in your picture that was taken of that wall broke when a tree came down in 2012. The chain link fence belongs to lot number 3. It was not my fence. That was all his fence. Just pointing it out to you. Also, in the pictures you showed of my side of the property, it didn't show the erosion at the end. It was just taken showing the middle because he took, well, okay, let me just tell you. I've been living here for 40 years.
Excuse me, Ms. Hayes. Jim, why don't you swear her in because she's going to testify?
Oh, go ahead.
Can you raise your right hand, please? Please swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I've been living here for 40 years, and I totally object to this application for a variance because of all of the problems and that some of you have mentioned, referencing Bill Fitzgerald's report and Mr. Matlack's concurrence with Bill's report. And incidentally, Bill wrote another report in 2020, which was pretty much the same. And it's been over 4 years this is going on. In 2017, Mr. Linder made changes to his property and my property without my consent, without approvals, without the town, without anybody. He put the pool in, didn't check with anything. So when you talk to me about putting a wood wall in, because putting a block wall in would put too much pressure on his pool, he should have thought of that before he put a pool in without talking to anybody. I don't want a wall that's going to last 10 or 15 years less than a block wall. But in all the years I've been living on this property, I never had problems with drainage because my property is high and I had 3 big trees on it in the center part. I want to give you a little bit of background just so that you see the human side of this. The most egregious thing for me was taking down the trees because it anchored my entire yard. The root system, the trees were about 70 or 80 years old, and the roots went through the whole yard. Some of them were little ones on the surface, some were underneath, but it anchored the entire yard. And nothing that I could plant now is gonna bring that back. Mr. Linder came onto my property in June of 2017. He dug a 4-foot by 4-foot by 80-foot long trench. He removed, after he cut the trees down, virgin earth, black, rich, with little root systems everywhere. He discovered when he was building his pool that there was an old concrete pool on his property and he had to dig it up. So he dumped a lot of that in the 4-foot trench when he was filling it up. Rebar, shards of metal, junk, and then he covered that with construction sand. That's something like 1,200 cubic feet of my property was removed. I can't tell you, even now thinking about it, I get upset. The removal of my trees, the removal of my earth, and putting the debris in the sand destabilized my whole backyard. The whole thing is sliding. There's erosion everywhere. The picture doesn't show it. My concrete patio might have been old, but I'm living there 40 years, never had a crack, never had anything. It's shattering and it's sliding down and lifting up. There's 2 inches of erosion around my basement windows now, and you could see it's just lifting. there are holes in the ground that you can't see from the photographs. On the sides where he removed the wings, I don't know why he did that, the concrete block wings, all the dirt's flowing down, down to underneath his fence on the side where there's no retaining wall. It's not showing all of that in your pictures, but that's what's happening to my yard. The township told me not to make any improvements to my yard until we resolve this issue. And when he did this, it was right after my husband died, and I had to go to work fast. And I used to commute to the city every day, 5 hours round trip. I would leave at 6:30 in the morning and come home 7:30 at night. So it took me a couple of days to see what the heck was happening. My grandchildren were living with me at the time. They couldn't play in the yard. We still don't let them go there because there's stuff going on there. Therefore, I'm imploring the town to take an action to have him correct his violations and restore and repair my property. I want to work with the board. I want everybody to move on, but this is what I'm asking. That the Ocean Township engineers' recommendations are adapted in their entirety. You made a remark about Bill Fitzgerald not being here. Well, Bill Fitzgerald worked on this for 4 years. 4 years. And now it's 4 years. He left a month ago, 2 months ago. Well, the current engineer looked everything over and concurs with it. Those are township engineers. I would think that we can go by what the township engineers say. That's number one. Number two, I want whatever is agreed to, that there's an engineer appointed by the town, whoever it is, maybe it's Mr. Matlack, that is going to supervise every aspect of this work done. I do not allow Mr. Linder, his workers, or other professionals on my property without notice, approval at all times, because I was never given that courtesy. Because Mr. Linder has a history of delay, we're 4 years and 2 months in, and we're still submitting new plans to the township to be in compliance, okay? So I am begging you, please set a deadline where the new surveys will be done. Maybe 2 weeks from now, maybe 4 weeks from now, the plan has to be accepted. Maybe 6 weeks from now, 7 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, you complete the work. But please put this on a timeline. Next, I request a bond order. Large enough to cover all possible costs for the highest and best restoration of my property, and that the bond is triggered at a date. And again, I ask this because I was 65 when I started with this. I'm now 70. And I think that nothing is going to make this move forward without these things. And look, this board and its wisdom, whatever you deem reasonable, but I'm a senior citizen and I'm a widow and I work hard, and this home is the only thing I own. And I'm in your hands now, and I'm just asking for your help. That's all. I just want what's fair, and I don't want to have to compromise on the stability of anything just because he put a pool in that didn't have engineers and didn't ask permission and didn't get permits. So I'm going to worry about his pool now because he did it the way he did it. I want the maximum stability. So I'm putting myself in your hands. I really am completely putting myself in your hands. I don't know what else to say. I'm just so frustrated.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to be heard or question the engineers? Okay, with that, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I have a couple questions, and I think the board may have some questions. What, and this is to Ben, okay? What will the proposed wall at 18 inches and then the fence closer to Miss 80's property, how will that help her?
I don't understand. What did you ask?
Yeah, I'm asking our engineer, okay, how the replacement of the wall 18 inches from her property line and then the fence closer to her property line, how's that going to help her problem of erosion?
Well, we obviously we don't have a plan right now. But it looks like the existing wall doesn't go to the ends of the property, to the side lot lines. The proposed wall probably will have to do that. The wall that was shown on the plan that was submitted with the application was a larger wall that did extend almost to the ends of the property. So I imagine that will help any erosion problems. It should eliminate erosion problems. And that's something that we would review at, when the plan is submitted to make sure that that she doesn't have those problems.
So I get the difference was that the existing wall doesn't, so it's linking around the sides basically.
Right. It looks like the existing wall just isn't long enough, isn't sufficient, and she's having, I guess basically water is finding its way around and eroding from the side of the wall.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
I'm sorry. I'm looking for Mr. Steinberg. Mr. Steinberg. Yes. Question for the chair for my own education. Is this project bondable?
Private improvements are not bondable unless they are buffer landscaping. Those are typically the only private improvements that
would be with the site, and that would be with the site plan basically.
Right.
Okay.
This is not bondable, and we can't order Mr. The applicant to restore anything on Mrs. Adis's property. That would be a civil action she may have against him, but we can't order that. We can only make sure that the wall is sufficient to stop erosion, and we have that ability, even though Mr. Hirsch says that's only a variance and the wall is okay. In granting the variance, we can make whatever conditions we want within reason, since it is considered to be a 10-foot high wall, 4 and 6 combined. So we have some of those powers, but we don't have the ability to order him to do anything on Mrs. Adis's property or restore anything. We need to stop what the problem is now as fast as possible, but that action she'll have to take on her own.
Understood. Thank you.
Chair Worrell, I have questions. I don't know, Mr. Steinberg, were you still going?
No.
So I have a couple of questions. So if I'm understanding correctly, basically denying the variance does not help either party, but for a historical perspective, and not a blame game or finger pointing, but the 4 years, is it because of, I guess, our end or the applicant's end? Is it something that we didn't get to, or the applicant has not?
Mrs. Beal, it was, the wall was constructed, summonses were issued in order to exhaust his administrative avenues. The current applicant was permitted to apply to this board. Over a 2-year period, we granted extension after extension after extension, and this board voted to dismiss the case at that time because it had gone stale. Summonses were issued, and that's how we became at the point that we're at now. That's why when Mr. Malta had asked for new plans for me and our office, we all want the same thing, which is to provide all of our residents with fair treatment, and 4 years, in my opinion, we need to come to a conclusion on a resolution to this problem.
Okay, then my other question is for Mr. Matlack. If I'm not mistaken, you said you have not seen the property firsthand. Will you seeing it help in any way? Like as far as and I don't know because I don't know what you would see, but is there, I'm just thinking, this sounds like something maybe you want to lay your eyes on. If I know Mr. Fitzgerald's report is very thorough in reference, but is it something that if you saw it, it could help resolve with very specifics?
Well, we did see a photo of the current condition submitted by the applicant. That's correct. I have not been to the site in the applicant's backyard to see this. But I don't know that me going there is going to make too much of a difference of you know, the variance we're talking about. It's more, the concern is really just how the wall is constructed, where it's constructed, and the longevity of it. I think, like I said, the new wall will most likely help and would solve the erosion issues of Mrs. Ada's, because it would be a larger wall, longer wall, excuse me, and installed in a better manner with the proper, you know, engineering design and building permits. So I don't think that me going to the site would make too much of a difference one way or the other.
So, that leads me to another question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Bolton. Go ahead.
Thank you. So if we, in light of the time demands and the interest in getting this resolved while we can still safely perform construction, can whoever among the applicant's witnesses would be appropriate tell us how soon they can, if we make this, if we do vote on approval tonight, subject to satisfying the conditions that our professionals, particularly our engineer, needs, you know, how long is it going to take to get whatever amended plans and other information is needed to our professionals, so that doesn't hold things up? And can we hold you to that deadline?
Well, I'll respond, I guess. Unfortunately, we don't have the structural engineer available to tell you how quickly he'll do it tonight. We will certainly request it be expedited. Despite what you're hearing, I can only tell you my client wants this over every bit as much as everyone else. I understand his age has gone through, you know, some trauma related to her property as she sees it, and I'm not going to dispute it. I certainly was not involved any time during that period. But, you know, the client is spending very large, substantial sums of money to try to get this wall built, get it approved, and move forward. I can tell you that there is no advantage on his part to delaying this in any fashion. This delay that came up, I can only tell you, has absolutely nothing to do with Mr. Linder. These were engineering issues that he had no control over, didn't know, didn't direct, and I can tell you that firsthand. And I have been speaking with Mr. Fitzgerald. He and I go way back, you know, to try to get some resolution of this. And that's why I said in the beginning, I think the zoning issues had to be separated from some of the property issues the neighbor has, and that would have to be resolved by some agreement between the parties. Back when I was first involved in this, which is not 4 years ago, Mr. Fitzgerald was good enough to say he would try to be sort of a go-between to provide advice and to explain to the neighbor what we needed to do and try to get some consensus if we could, if they could resolve those property issues, which are, again, as Mr. Steinberg correctly points out, are not directly within the jurisdiction of the board. The property disputes between two neighbors, and whether there was trespass, damage, etc. My client may have a different view of some of those comments, but we're not going to get into that. I accept whatever is said and the concerns as being legitimate. Okay. But that would have to be resolved. And, we had suggested back quite some time ago, we would participate in such a meeting, a conference, maybe Mr. Fitzgerald sort of acting as an intermediary to agree what, if anything, would be done with the other property. And I'm only pointing that out as what was made what was said in our discussions. But again, I emphasize it's not part of this zoning application per se. Okay. We have to construct the wall correctly so as to help cure this erosion problem because it affects the neighbor and our property. And we have to make sure the neighbor's property is not adversely impacted by this. And that's why the design and appropriate spacing is all important.
Okay.
But ultimately, the bottom line is it's got to be done so we can correct whatever issues do exist now. And the sooner the better.
Tom, to go back to Mr. Fitzgerald's reports, he had provided 3 separate designs. I'm trying to get to an end of this, and I understand your engineer's concerns with regard to 2x2x4 blocks, bringing in a crane, large blocks. Perhaps Mike could step in on a construction angle, but I would like to bring everyone's attention to the retaining wall concept 2 prepared by Mr. Fitzgerald. Now that is a solid concrete wall. I don't believe that there would be the structural issues that the weight of 2x2x4 concrete would be. It would alleviate Ms. Adis's, the next door neighbor's concerns, and we could get that project completed, in my experience, in the fastest amount of time possible. No lead time on concrete for Mike from Blue Creek. We wouldn't have to wait for galvanized. We wouldn't have to wait for lumber. Concrete is readily available, especially with his magnitude of projects. We would simply, if you would agree to that, then the rest is structural calculations.
Well, I'm sorry, were you done?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt. Ron, I don't see where that's going to move the ball forward. One, you want us to go back and start all over again with our structural engineer on another plan, even accepting one of those concepts, which Bill makes it very clear, these are just concepts. All that engineering information has to be done. The calculations have to be done. The grading plan, everything I said we would have to submit for this wall has to be submitted for that wall. That wall is not like, oh, there it is, so we just go tomorrow and start building it. I mean, even if materials are available. So I certainly can't answer for the wall that the engineer hasn't reviewed and to say, sure, we can do that wall. I don't know. I'm certainly not an engineer. I'm not suggesting it's good, bad, or indifferent. My understanding was that these walls, because of the support issues and the structural strain on a pool, which was permitted, could create a problem.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, you have an engineer here. I believe he could chime in.
Mr. Kirk.
He's not a structural engineer.
I'm not a structural engineer, but I've been in the structural field in Berlin for long enough. We're talking about concept 2, so I'm clear?
Yes.
Concept 2 would require major heavy equipment. It may get done faster, meaning by the end date, but the construction period would probably be 4 to 5 times as long. Easily. I mean, they'd have to rip out all the concrete. They may have to redo some piping. The concrete around the pool would have to be removed. They probably have to excavate to see where the piping for the drains are, if there are any on that side. This is 3 feet deep. There's a lateral bracing typically on a pool of this type, which would interfere with this wall toe in this concept.
Then we're making more trouble than it's worth.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I definitely think
Okay.
the fastest, I know the lead time materials is a concern, but the fastest, cleanest, and neatest wall to put up to get this application put to bed is definitely the soldier beam and lagging that Mr. David there, Mike recommended.
Is there a combination that can be done? Like instead of the wood, I guess my concern is that
There are composite
the wood is gonna
materials
rot.
that could be submitted. Mike, you could probably answer that better than me. Not concrete, but composite that lasts just as long.
Can I speak?
Go ahead,
So-
Mike. Mike, yeah, you're still under oath. Go ahead.
Thank you. So there are different options. Actually, I'm sure a few of you guys have seen as you're driving down 18, you will see those concrete walls that are actually do have some type of I-beams that support them. So there might be, I don't want to say that there isn't, but there might be some kind of concrete, prefab concrete panels that we could get and install. We would have to look into it. And believe it or not, to the applicant and to you, Tom, it might end up being even cheaper as far as materials, since wood and especially treated lumber is skyrocketed. So we could look into that. But I do think overall the system of using these I-beams by augering and installing those posts is going to be the quietest, the safest. If they ever need to be replaced in 20 or 30 years now, as far as the lumber, those can be slid up and a new one dropped in if need to be. We are thinking that much gravel behind it will definitely give them a very, very long lifespan as far as just tie walls that I have taken run down 40, 50 years later in Atlantic Islands, and they had creosote on them, but they were there. They looked like, I don't want to say brand new, but looked very good after 40 years.
But if we could do the concrete panels, okay, with the same system, it sounds like it alleviates everyone's concerns with regard to the rotting of wood, okay, and makes it a thinner, the weights would not be as great. I believe Mr. May would concur that the weight of the 6x6 timbers or the concrete are minimal in difference and wouldn't provide the structural challenges that all the Bill's, larger walls were, and yet give all the structural lateral loads that you're looking for and not have to get anywhere closer to the pool, so we don't have to make another problem with the pool area when trying to resolve an erosion problem.
I agree.
As I said, we're willing to do whatever we can within these designs, and that's why Mike can check on material. The structural engineer will submit a plan. We want to do this as quickly as we can. Trust me.
Okay,
We want it done.
As do we. Mrs. Adis, I believe, wants to speak. Chair.
You all are aware that the wall he put up now is on my property, several feet on my property.
It is not.
Underneath it is. He built the wall right on the property line, and the gravel and the supports are on my property. I know they are. I saw them. I saw it being put in.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, when that wall's taken out, you will see, and I'm expecting that that's going to be removed.
Well, I if that's the case, then maybe we should do some test bits to see if there's supports, because then we may be able to certify the wall as it is.
Problem is that
the one reason we're removing the wall is because it has no supports.
And the wall was constructed without permits, so you can't certify what you don't have.
Well, what I'm saying is she's saying that there's supports that were placed
Not supports, there's the gravel and all the stuff you put, it's all on my property.
Okay.
Well, look, when they remove the walls, we said, if there's any debris there, we're going to take it away and dispose of it.
The problem is it's on her property. And if there's.
I want to move forward and work with
Well,
the
either they
board.
want it or they don't. I mean, you know, she'll cooperate or not. I mean,
Okay,
Oh,
I have a
Well,
question.
everybody knows I'll cooperate, but I want to make a request. Everything is always handed in at the last minute, and I never know what's going on. I just want the board to work with me, so I have some kind of say as we're moving forward.
Okay,
I don't want
Mrs.
to do everything
Mrs. Adis.
blind. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, Mrs. Adis, would you allow me to be the liaison between the two?
I think an engineer should be involved.
I would get the engineer involved, but you and I would have daily conversations until such time as your property is made whole. Okay, we don't have to get into easements, and this would be done in the most expeditious fashion as possible, so that you can go back to your life and the applicant go back to his. Is that fair?
Ron, I would love to work with you, but I want to see paper. I want to see it with my eyes.
I promise you, if the board were to act favorably this evening, you would receive daily emails from me when I receive paperwork from them.
I want to see pictures because I want to be able to share what I know about the land I've been living on for 40 years. It might be helpful. That's
I understand, but the applicant will work through me, and you and I will be having conversations so that everyone can have this go to bed and be made whole again.
Okay, may I also have conversations with the town engineer along the way?
Absolutely.
Okay, and would work be supervised by, I'm assuming, Mr. Matlack, when the work is being done? I have a here of.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Adis, we've lost you. You're on two different spots. Please unmute yourself. Mrs. Adis, you're still muted.
On your iPhone, you can unmute yourself.
On the phone. There you go.
Unmuted, okay.
Okay,
Are we good now?
we're good.
Can you hear me?
Got it.
Okay. Okay, that's all. Look, I feel used and abused a little, so I just want to get past this also. I want to live my life. I want my neighbor to live his life. But please, I need to be kept in the loop as we're moving forward. You can understand that, everybody on the call, no?
Mrs. Adis, just so you're aware of the process, the board, if the board
I
approves
can't
this-
hear.
Can you hear me? Can you
I
hear me
can't
now?
hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
For some reason, you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me, Mrs. Adis?
Very, very faintly.
Turn up the volume on your phone.
I did, it's up to the top.
Okay.
I heard that.
I don't know why. I don't know why.
Everybody can kind of keep their voice up as much as possible for you. That's all I can say.
Well,
speak loudly.
If the board approves, then I would be reviewing the newly submitted plans. And once they were done to my satisfaction and all of the conditions were met, the construction department would do the inspections. Now, Mr. Kirk is the constant with all of this. He works at Town Hall, so he is your best liaison for this.
I love working with Ron, but because I'm not an engineer, I just might have some questions. I just want to have that ability to ask you some engineering things so I understand them, that's all.
Mrs. Adis, any question that you have, if I don't have the answer, I will go to Mr. Matlack and get the answer in writing for you.
Okay.
So if I may jump in, circling back to the question I originally posed to the applicant, maybe I should ask you, Mr. Matlack. I just want to put some deadlines in here if we go positively, again, to make sure things don't slow down again. How soon do you think it would be both reasonable for the applicant to get whatever you need to you and, also give us enough time at the other end for you to approve it and get this construction done? So I want to, I'm looking for somebody to give me a date that I can put in a motion that's a deadline for if the plaintiff wants his, if the applicant wants his approval, part of the condition is that he get you the material that you need by a certain date.
Well, that was discussed before. We don't have the structural engineer here, so we can't speak for him on, when he's going to be able to submit plans. But, I'm assuming that everybody is going to be expediting this as much as possible, myself included. I know the applicant wants to get it done, and I know everybody at the town wants to get it done for everyone's benefit. So, a few weeks for the plans to be put together, I think is reasonable. And then, I'll review them as soon as I get them, turn that around as quickly as possible, and then it can go into construction, assuming everybody is in agreement.
Okay.
I have one question. Mr. Matlack,
Yes.
did you make reference to the fact that the wall would be extended lengthwise to the end of both property lines? Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood. Okay, thank you.
The plan that we have shows that. Obviously, we're going to have to get a new plan, but I would imagine that it would be something similar. So yes, most likely that is correct.
Okay.
I have it as a condition. Okay.
Okay.
So we're talking about a wall the entire length of the rear property line, correct? Matt? Ben?
Yes.
Okay.
Whatever is needed in order to make it work and fix the drainage problems and erosion problems.
That'll all be shown on the plans that we submit. That'll all be shown.
Yes.
Exactly where it has to go to prevent any erosion.
So if we were to approve this tonight, with the variance would be approved, but the conditions would be that the applicant would submit plans within 30 days. Can we do that? Tom?
I mean, I'll accept that for now. Sure. I mean, I can tell you what I'm going to do. Tomorrow, I'm going to speak with Mike, the contractor, and I'm going to speak with the engineer, both Mr. Lieber and the structural engineer, and ask them for a timeline. I know I can't do it tonight, but I mean, I'm doing the best I can. I will ask them how long is it going to take you to get it done. We can put a 30-day thing on tonight, and if I can get it done in 2 weeks, we'll get it done in 2 weeks. I mean,
All right. And then I assume that the plans also were going to, the plans and information submitted to Ben would include materials, so he can determine which would be the best usable materials.
Yes. We're going to look into the alternate of the potential concrete prefab sheets as opposed to lumber. But yes, all of that is going to be put in together with this plan, what we've come up with, why, and what its longevity is, etc.
And the wings are going to be put back at the end of whatever the length of the wall is?
I will meet with Mr. Matlack on the property, and we will restore it to what it was originally.
Okay.
As long as the applicant is agreeable to that.
Well, it's going to, I mean, obviously the structural engineer is going to give us the design. So I can't, certainly don't want to speak for him, whether we call it wings or not. It's going to be to prevent any erosion from the other property. So,
How about to the greatest extent possible, Tom?
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's the goal. Mike, you had something to add about that?
Yes, if I may say, and I'm not taking, of course, any sides or anything, but I do think that both sides really should leave it up to the engineer. I'm sure the applicant does not want any erosion on his property either. He doesn't want any dirt going down onto his property, and I'm sure the neighbor in the back does not want to lose any fill or any dirt in the back of their property. I do suggest, if I may, that the township engineer, Ron Kirk, and maybe me, if necessary, we can walk both properties, if it's okay with the neighbor in the back, and try to kind of have an understanding what needs to be done. And so this way we are all on the same page and avoid any back and forth paperwork, and get it done right there and then and finish with it and move forward.
So
Okay,
there's no
and-
misunderstanding.
We will contact you prior to entering your property. Before I don't want you seeing 3 people walking around your backyard and getting you upset. When we're going to go out there, we'll schedule a visit, and you can be part of it if you wish, but it'll be myself, the engineer, and Mike from Blue Creek, and you'll know at whatever noon on a Tuesday that we'll be walking your side of the property with your permission. Fair? Okay.
I
All right.
have nothing else on our case, so.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you. I was in the process of closing the outdoor participation. I need a motion.
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Second. Thank you, Miss. Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Steinberg.
Yeah, but I just have a question for Tom Hirsch. When will the basketball court be cut down?
Mike, do you know how quickly they can arrange for that soil cutting of that couple of feet?
We do the same 30 days?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely, yes.
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, we understand, it's not gonna be done tomorrow, but I wanted some sort of deadline.
But
okay, what the board is voting on, excuse me, voting on is basically a variance for the basketball court, which is in the front yard setback, will be cut back and removed out of the front yard setback, so that variance goes away, and the applicant withdraws his request for same, provided that he's going to reduce the size of the basketball court within the next 30 days. Number one. Number two, he's asking for a fence height variance of 10 feet where only 6 feet is permitted. That's 4 feet for the retaining wall plus 6 feet for the fence. Although they're on the same plane, you combine them if they're within 10 feet. And it's a condition of that within 30 days, he's going to submit all the proposed plans that we talked about tonight for a soldier beam and lagging support wall with sufficient information to be reviewed by our board engineer as to whether or not the extent of the wall, the position of the wall, the material of the wall, et cetera, will resolve the current erosion problem and prevent it from continuing.
Thank you, Mr. Steinberg.
And then install the wall as soon thereafter as possible. I mean, we can't control a date because we don't know about materials.
With the timeline, projected timeline.
Yeah, but he gets everything in 30 days. We're gonna say done in 60 days, 80 days. I don't know if we can pin him down to November 15th or something. I don't suggest it.
I believe that Mike has his hand up. I believe December 1 is not an unreasonable date to have this all done. And Mike, tell me if I'm mistaken.
I don't think that it's going to be an issue, but maybe we could kind of break this up into two. We'll submit the plan and we'll give you guys an information. For example, if we were to go with the concrete panels, the company would say that this might be 6 weeks out. If we go with the wood, it could take about 2 weeks, and then we can have two options to see what we're playing with and go from there.
We will continue to report. So not only am I going to ask to get a schedule when the submissions can be made on the plans, I will also then have Mike verify availabilities, you know, like what is the lead time for steel, or what is the lead time for the concrete? So you'll know before the time frames, this is what we are facing.
So
Because the construction itself is not that long.
Why don't we make the condition that you've got to get the plans within 30 days, and all timing shall be in accordance with the agreement of for installation, being subject to the agreement of our board engineer. We'll give the timing up to you when you know more about it, man. Is that be all right?
I think that's fair. Yes.
I mean, we can't, you say December 1st, but we find out we can't get materials till November 20th. What are you going to do? So I'll put something into the resolution that the timing for completion will be, subject to continued monitoring by Ben. Okay.
All right.
But I just can't give a date without knowledge. It's kind of, doesn't really. I don't think it works. I don't know, my board members are.
Maybe you could put in a date, Mark, like December 1st, but allow that date to be adjusted by Ben.
Okay.
If he's given reasonable reasons why it has to be. At least then there's a firm date, and they don't have to go back to the board if it has to be extended.
Okay. Subject to extension to be granted by extensions to be granted by the board engineer as to, material availability, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Do it that way. So that's fine. Thank you for the suggestion.
All right, thank you, Mr.
I make that motion, Malta.
Thank you, sir. Second?
Fuller seconds.
Thank you. Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Thank you,
Hershey,
ladies and gentlemen,
Thank
for
you,
your
Chairman.
time, consideration. We will try to make this happen as painlessly and quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Everybody.
Need a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
I'll second, Manel.
Thank you. I need a Amy last roll call, please.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Manel,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Beal,
Yes.
Chairman Worrell.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone,
all.
for understanding how difficult, some applications can be, and working through this in our office. It was greatly appreciated.
Thank you all.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Be safe.
Good night.